The scene unfolds with the mundane familiarity of a daily routine. A man arrives at his own suburban home, presses a button on his visor, and watches as the garage door rattles upward to reveal his car, a vehicle he's driven for years, purchased with his hard-earned money. It is a moment of unthinking ritual, a signal that the workday is over and sanctuary is near. But on this day, the ritual is violently shattered. Before he can even step across the threshold of his own property, a woman comes running down the street, her finger thrust in accusation, her voice pitched in a crescendo of outrage as she dials 911. Her claim, delivered not as a question but as a furious declaration, is that the car he has just legitimately accessed is not his at all. She insists she just bought it, and therefore, he must be a thief. This was a jaw-dropping reality for a black homeowner in a confrontation that has since ignited outrage across the internet. What a woman involved has been dubbed the HOA Karen. The label is more than just a meme. It encapsulates a specific archetype of weaponized privilege and assumed authority. Her actions suggest a self-appointed role as neighborhood sentinel, a guardian of property values, and, more insidiously, of a racialized status quo. The incident, captured on video and swiftly going viral, is about far more than a simple case of mistaken identity. It is a stark examination of the dangerous assumptions that underpin such confrontations. The woman did not see a homeowner unloading his car. She did not see a taxpayer, a neighbor, or a man in his own space. She saw a black man interacting with a valuable asset in an affluent setting, and her cognitive bias immediately categorized that interaction as criminal. Her leap to conclusion required no evidence, no polite inquiry, only the certainty of her own prejudice. The act of him opening his own garage with his own opener was, in her mind, not proof of ownership, but merely part of the brazen act of theft she had already decided was occurring. Furthermore, the story exposes the terrifying power dynamics at play when false accusations are unleashed. By immediately dialing 911, she wasn't just expressing a suspicion. She was summoning the full, potentially lethal, power of the state against an innocent man. For a black man in America, a police response triggered by a racially charged wellness check or a theft report is not a minor inconvenience. It is a life-threatening scenario. History is littered with tragedies that began with exactly this kind of hasty, biased 911 call. The homeowner's calm demeanor in the video, a masterclass in restraint under profound provocation, likely served as his best defense in a situation that could have escalated with horrifying speed. Ultimately, this encounter is a microcosm of a much larger societal illness. It's about who is presumed to belong and who is presumed to be a threat. It's about the audacity to challenge a man's right to his own property on his own driveway based on nothing but skin color. The HOA Karen did not just accuse a man of stealing a car. She attempted to steal his dignity, his sense of safety in his community, and his rightful claim to the home he earned. While the internet's outrage will eventually fade, the chilling lesson of this story remains. For some, the color of your skin can still make your very existence in your own home look like a crime. Marcus was the embodiment of quiet, steady neighbor everyone hopes for, a dedicated professional in his late 30s. He had chosen this particular suburban subdivision for its sense of community and order, qualities he valued after long days at work. For years, he had been a man who meticulously edged his lawn on Saturday mornings, who always offered a genuine, if reserved, smile and a wave when driving past neighbors on their evening walks. His golden retriever, Leo, was a local favorite, and Marcus's daily walks with him were a familiar fixture on the tree-lined sidewalks. He was a man who believed in playing by the rules, paying his homeowners association dues promptly, and taking pride in the upkeep of what was, for him, not just a house, but a hard-won sanctuary. On this particular afternoon, there was nothing to signal that the fabric of his quiet life was about to be torn. The day had been standard, meetings, deadlines, the familiar commute. As he turned onto his street, the rhythm of his routine was a comfort. He guided his silver sedan, a car he meticulously researched, financed, and maintained, into his driveway. The vehicle was as much a part of his identity as his home. It carried him on road trips, through rainstorms, and on countless errands. Its place in his garage each night was as unquestioned as his own place in his bed. With a mind already shifting gears toward dinner and relaxation, he performed the unconscious act he had done thousands of times before. His thumb found and pressed a warn button on his sun visor. The garage door responded with its predictable, low hum, beginning its steady ascent to reveal the orderly interior. Inside were the expected markers of his life. A neatly hung ladder, storage bins labeled in his own handwriting, and, of course, the empty space waiting for the car he was currently driving. It was a view that represented stability, ownership, and the quiet satisfaction of building a life for oneself. But for one woman, a relative newcomer to the neighborhood, whose worldview was seemingly filtered through a lens of suspicion and self-appointed authority, this utterly normal scene did not compute. From her vantage point down the street, her perception was not shaped by facts, but by bias. She did not see Marcus, the established neighbor. She did not see a homeowner performing a mundane task. Her gaze, sharpened by preconceived notions, interpreted a different narrative entirely. A black man was accessing a garage, and the car he was in must therefore be the instrument of a crime in progress. This completely normal action, the universal signal of a resident arriving home, was, in her mind, the beginning of an outrageous drama she felt compelled to star in. Where Marcus saw his garage, she saw a target. Where he felt the comfort of routine, she sensed an opportunity for confrontation. Her reality, warped by prejudice, could not accommodate the simple truth that a man who looked like Marcus could legitimately belong in that house, with that car, in that garage. His very existence in that space was, to her, an anomaly that required her intervention. This fundamental disconnect between his lived reality and her bigoted assumption set the stage for a confrontation that was as illogical as it was insulting, turning his driveway from a place of arrival into an arena of accusation. The woman, whom neighbors would later identify as a self-appointed HOA watchdog, was a recent addition to the community. In her short time there, she had already cultivated a reputation for a particular brand of aggressive vigilance. She was the type to pace the sidewalks with measuring tape, her brow furrowed at a blade of grass daring to exceed the covenant-mandated height. She fired off lengthy, pedantic emails to the HOA board about garbage cans being brought an hour too late, with an unauthorized shade of beige on a neighbor's new blinds. Her authority was entirely self-conferred, a role she had crafted to feed a need for control and superiority within the ordered world she demanded. But on this day, her nitpicking escalated from a nuisance to a profound and dangerous violation. The moment her gaze locked onto Marcus, a man she likely recognized only as an unfamiliar black face, performing the simple act of entering his own home, her internal alarm didn't just ring, it screamed. Her bias instantly overrode all logic and observation. She did not see a man coming home from work. She saw a narrative she had already written in her mind, a criminal in the act. Marching across the street with the purposefulness of a law enforcement official, she weaponized her phone, thrusting it toward Marcus to record. This act was calculated. It was not for documentation, but for intimidation, an attempt to assert dominance and cast him as a perpetrator in her manufactured drama. Her opening salvo was not a question, but a shrill, definitive accusation. "That's not your car. I just bought that car. You stole it." The audacity of the lie was breathtaking. She hadn't just purchased a car. The claim was a bizarre, instant fabrication designed to legitimize her confrontation and position herself as the wrong party. Marcus, his evening shattered, responded with stunning, almost superhuman calm. He was a man suddenly forced to defend his most basic right to exist on his own property. He didn't yell. He explained, with the patience of someone speaking to a confused child, that the car was indeed his. He outlined the irrefutable proof: registration, insurance, the daily presence of the vehicle in that very spot. He was appealing to reason, to facts, to the shared reality that should bind neighbors together. But she was operating in a different reality, one where her feelings trumped his facts. Reason was a language she refused to speak. As he spoke, her volume only increased, her accusations growing more venomous. "Thief!" she shouted. The word meant to wound and delegitimize. Then she made the most dangerous move possible. She dialed 911. Her words to the dispatcher were a masterclass in racially charged manipulation. She did not say, "There's a man at a house who seems confused." She strategically fabricated a story designed to trigger a maximal and potentially violent police response. She claimed a suspicious black man was breaking into her garage and stealing her car. This wasn't a mistake. It was a malicious lie. By stating the garage and car were hers, she was attempting to legally and narratively erase Marcus's ownership and presence entirely. She weaponized her whiteness, knowing that her word, as a white woman in an affluent neighborhood, would initially carry more weight than his. And most damningly, she injected race as the primary descriptor, aware that it would paint a target on his back for the arriving officers. This was the terrifying core of the incident. It wasn't just a false accusation. It was a deliberate attempt to summon the power of the state, a power that has proven, time and again, to be lethally disproportionate for black men, to resolve a personal, prejudice-fueled grievance. With that call, she wasn't just trying to embarrass Marcus. She was potentially placing his life in mortal danger, all to protect her own bigoted ego from the simple, undeniable truth that he belonged there, and she was wrong. The wail of sirens, a sound Marcus had only ever associated with someone else's emergency, now cut to the tranquil suburban air, growing louder until it was deafening. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing a dizzying rhythm of blue and red across the manicured lawns and neutral-toned house fronts, pulled to a sharp halt in front of his property. The arrival of the police transformed the scene from a hostile confrontation into a potentially perilous one. Officers stepped out, their postures wary, their eyes quickly scanning to assess the threat. The atmosphere, already charged with the woman's vitriol, now crackled with the tension of state-sanctioned authority. Marcus remained exactly where he was, standing calmly beside his car, a car that was both the subject of the dispute and his anchor to reality. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat contradicting his outwardly placid demeanor. He knew, with every fiber of his being, that he had done nothing wrong. But as a black man in America, he was also painfully, historically aware that innocence is not always a shield. He knew that a false accusation, delivered with the hysterical conviction of a white woman, could spiral into a life-altering, or even life-ending, tragedy in a matter of seconds. His calm was not a lack of fear. It was a vital survival strategy, a conscious effort to project non-threatening compliance in a situation where his very presence had been weaponized against him. The officers, trained to de-escalate, immediately separated the 2 parties. The woman launched into her performance with renewed vigor, frantically repeating her fabricated story to the officers. She painted herself as a victim of a brazen crime, insisting the silver sedan was hers, freshly purchased from a dealership. She claimed Marcus had not only stolen it, but had the audacity to park in her garage, a detail that revealed her attempt to completely usurp his ownership of the home. Her narrative was a house of cards, built on assumption and prejudice. The officer's request for proof was the first gust of wind. They asked for a bill of sale, a registration document, a VIN number, keys, anything tangible to substantiate her wild claim. She had nothing. No paperwork, no evidence, just the escalating, increasingly shrill insistence of her word. Her authority, which had seemed so absolute moments before, began to evaporate under the cool gaze of procedure. In stark, quiet contrast, Marcus presented his case not with emotion, but with documentation. He calmly handed over his driver's license, his vehicle registration, and his insurance card. The process was seamless. Each document supported the other, creating an unassailable paper trail of truth. The name matched, the address matched, the vehicle description matched. The registration was dated years ago, not days. The evidence was undeniable, boringly bureaucratic, and utterly conclusive. The car had always been and would always be his. The officers, their initial caution shifting toward realization, turned back to the woman. With the facts laid bare, they asked a pivotal question. Not what she claimed, but why she believed it. Why did she think this car, parked at this man's home, was hers? Her answer laid her prejudice bare for the official record. She admitted she had been eyeing that car for months and believed Marcus couldn't possibly afford it. The officer's demeanor shifted from one of cautious neutrality to one of clear, professional disapproval. The weight of Marcus's documentation was undeniable, and the woman's utter lack of evidence rendered her claims not just false, but frivolous. They issued her a stern warning about the serious consequences of filing a false police report and the criminal offense of wasting valuable police resources. For her, the encounter ended with a reprimand, a bureaucratic slap on the wrist. For Marcus, being cleared immediately was a hollow victory. The officer's departure did not erase the visceral memory of their arrival. The adrenaline that had sustained him during the confrontation receded, leaving behind a cold, trembling anger and a profound sense of vulnerability. He was safe, but he was shaken to his core. It wasn't about the car. It was a devastating realization that his ownership, his belonging, and his very presence on his own property were conditional, subject to the whims of a stranger's prejudice. He had been forced to prove his right to exist in a space he owned, and that indignity left a stain no apology could wash away. In the age of hyperconnected suburbs, truth travels at the speed of a shared Ring doorbell video. Word of the incident spread through the community not as gossip, but as a shared outrage. Neighbors who had known Marcus for years, who had seen him patiently teaching his dog to sit on that very lawn, who had exchanged holiday greetings with him, were horrified. The silent majority, who had perhaps tolerated the woman's nitpicking about fence heights and mulch types, found her racism a bridge too far. They rallied around Marcus, offering messages of support and solidarity. Their outrage was a powerful antidote to the isolation he felt. The doorbell camera footage, captured from multiple angles, provided an irrefutable, silent witness to the entire event. Marcus's calm demeanor, the woman's aggressive gesticulations, the arrival of the police. When these videos inevitably made their way to social media, the story exploded beyond the neighborhood confines. Thousands of people weighed in, their comments dissecting the woman's blatant prejudice and reckless behavior. The term HOA Karen became a shorthand for a specific brand of weaponized whiteness and unchecked entitlement. The court of public opinion was swift and unanimous in its condemnation, holding her accountable in a way the police could not. This public shaming had real-world consequences for the accuser. The HOA board, likely embarrassed by the negative attention and pressured by its rightful constituents, was flooded with formal complaints about her behavior. Neighbors who had once quietly rolled their eyes at her now openly pushed back against her attempts to control and criticize. The very authority she had so zealously cultivated began to crumble beneath the weight of her own bigotry. Reports swirled that there was a concerted push from multiple households to have her removed from the board entirely, a move to formally revoke the platform she had abused. Amid the noise, Marcus found his voice. Choosing not to remain a silent victim, he decided to share his story on his own terms. In interviews and social media posts, he articulated the deeper, more terrifying truth that lay beneath the viral spectacle. He expressed gratitude that the officers had acted professionally and that the situation had ended without violence. But he was acutely aware of how easily it could have gone another way. He spoke to the pervasive fear that black men and their families live with, the knowledge that a single biased 911 call, a sudden movement misinterpreted by a nervous officer, or simply bad luck could turn a mundane Tuesday into a tragedy headline. His goal was not revenge, but awareness. By sharing his traumatic experience, Marcus transformed a personal violation into a public lesson on the insidious nature of racial profiling and the very real perils of living while black in America, even and especially when you play by all the rules and achieve the dream.